UFC Fight Night Qatar just wrapped up, and it was a pretty good card. The finishes were great. Some of the fights were excellent. The main card blew me away, dude. That was such an exciting card, bro. But I did pretty well on the picks. I got 11 out of 14 correct and 4 out of 5 lock picks correct. So it was a pretty good card for that, but let's get right into the performances, dude. I have to score it like a 9 out of 10. The main event was great, although fairly one-sided. The co-main event was a good fight. The main card fights leading up to that were stellar. There were just a few duds in the prelims. The UFC's definitely got to make some cuts, bro, because some of these guys just don't belong. Oh, and everything Herb Dean was talking about when he was saying that the referees are going to be stricter on the fouls. Well, that was a load of BS. Headbutt in the main event, 2 eye pokes in the co-main event. It's exactly what I said. Watch when the referees give more stern warnings, and that's exactly what happened. Their warnings were more aggressive, which is only a confirmation to the fighter that they got away with cheating. That's all it is. Warnings don't actually mean anything. Point deductions do, and so do purse reductions, and so do disqualifications, but those are as rare as Dan Hooker finishing those guillotines. Arman Tsarukyan destroyed Dan Hooker. Hooker's guillotines would make Dustin jealous, but Arman was winning the striking as well. Even before the headbutt, he was landing some kicks here and there. He threw a combination immediately before the headbutt, landed a right straight in there. The headbutt definitely impacted the fight. Like, you see the damage all over Hooker's face. He was looking like Frankenstein out there, and the ref thought it was normal. Headbutts, who cares? It's an entirely different sport. Arman was going to probably finish him regardless at some point in the fight, but I wish the officiating was respectable, and it's not. Sad to say. Even if it was unintentional, I don't care about like the intentionality of it because the damage was done. Whether Arman did it purposely or not is not going to change the damage that it caused. It's the effects of the fouls that should be taken into consideration, not whether it was intentional. But from a 1.5 year layoff, Arman looked pretty good out there, dude. It looked like he didn't miss a single step. Striking looked good. He was explosive. The takedowns were a given due to Hooker's guillotines, other than the first shot, which was defended, and ultimately led to the finish much quicker than if Hooker focused on actually defending the takedowns. At the end of the day, I don't think it would have made much of a difference. I think eventually Hooker would have succumbed to the grappling and maybe get TKO'd to a finish, maybe a submission at some point. I mean, that was the first submission win in Arman's career, or at least in the UFC. It was very easy. He's so incredibly technical. Like, the way he was, like, systematically getting to the full mount. Tactical wrist control to maneuver into different positions, especially for the arm triangle, got his head on the outside of the shoulder due to his wrist control on Dan Hooker's right arm. The ground and pound was all strategic. Everything he did in the grappling had purpose. Arman Tsarukyan, as much as people hate the guy, and he is sort of a jerk, you know, he did headbutt Hooker in the weigh-ins, and you can't be doing that. He headbutted him in the fight. He's got the best headbutt in the game, dude. Can't hate the player, hate the game, I guess. Every fighter should be doing this. Now that we know that fighters can throw headbutts without a point deduction, they should all be doing this. Bro, he deformed Hooker's face from a headbutt. Nearly closed his eye entirely. Every fighter should be doing this. Until the referees get replaced, because I don't think they're going to get any better. But yeah, it was a pretty straightforward fight. Honestly, I was most intrigued to see Arman's returning performance, to see if he's in good form, and what I could take away from it in the imminent Ilia Topuria fight. And I think he could do pretty well. But Ilia is sort of an enigma in the grappling at this level, because he's never fought any wrestler like Arman. Not even close. The best wrestler he's fought that actually attempted with consistent takedowns at least was Bryce Mitchell or Charles Oliveira. It was Bryce Mitchell, right? Bryce actually attempted multiple takedowns. Josh Emmett did not approach it with that type of style. Neither did Charles. Charles tried to take him down once, and that was from the clinch. Ilia absolutely shut that down. That was actually pretty impressive takedown defense. I think his natural stance is going to be pretty resistant against Arman because it puts him in a ready position to sprawl at all times. So that's going to be quite interesting. I don't think Arman could strike with him too well, except, you know, maybe a few head kicks can land, but Ilia is eventually going to adjust to that. Just like Arman didn't feel any adjustment against Dan Hooker. Hooker fought the same way through and through. He's going to fight a much higher fight IQ opponent in Ilia. So that's going to be quite interesting. It's the best versus the best. I don't want to see Paddy Pimblett or Justin Gaethje or anybody else fight Ilia right now, except for Arman or Islam. Paddy should fight Max or Charles. Those would be insane fights. Gaethje should just retire. And Hooker should fight like Benoit Saint Denis. That would be insane, dude. So can't wait for those fights. If Paddy Pimblett gets a title shot before Arman, well, Arman's going to be next in line. But if they do one in the meantime, I guess it's okay. if they want to capitalize on the first Paramount card, right? If Arman's not prepared to fight that soon, then, maybe they go to Paddy and then Ilya fights in the summer against Arman, because it seems like Arman just fights like once or twice a year at most. But same goes with Ilya. So, and then we go to the co-main event. And then Ian Garry defeated Belal Muhammad by a unanimous decision, 230-27 to 129-28. Even though Garry clearly won the fight, I thought it was pretty competitive. Belal was bringing the fight to him. Couldn't get a single takedown, and honestly, it's bringing into question whether Belal's takedowns against Leon inflated the perception of his skill, or Ian Garry and Jack Della Maddalena have that good of takedown defense, and it causes such a gap between Islam and Belal's skills, due to JDM not being able to defend any of Islam's takedowns, and Garry defended all of Belal's. A lot of good pot shotting, but also some good strikes from the clinch, disengaging with elbows and stuff. Garry was very fast, but he just couldn't put him away. At one point, he stunned Belal with the right hand, and Belal took it pretty well. He pressured throughout the fight, but he was just a step behind, man. He was trying to work off that body jab into a right hand over the top, which was by far his most successful technique throughout. But Ian Garry's was the two different leg kicks, the outside calf kick, as well as the knee stomp. He was quite elusive throughout and essentially just outpointed Belal to a pretty solid win. And I do believe that Garry should have been deducted at least a point for the two eye pokes before the fake one, okay? The third one definitely did not land. There were two before. The referee did not take a point away, and that was Rich Mitchell too, dude. I thought Rich Mitchell was going to be the gold standard. And I don't know what Herb Dean was talking about, that the referees are going to be much stricter with point deductions. Hey, man, Garry poked Belal twice within like a few minutes and only got a stern warning. Eye poke should be an automatic point deduction. The first one would have discouraged the second one, right? It would cause Garry to close his hands, which he was doing afterward, which is why the third one didn't connect. But hey, man, the sport is just not going to change no matter what these referees say, bro. And we finally get to talk about now as to who should get the next title shot. So you have Michael Morales, who has, I think, the single best win when you take into factor the performance itself, along with a high-level opponent like Sean Brady. He TKO'd him in the first round. But then Ian Garry has two prominent wins against Prates and now Belal. But he won both of those by a decision. So he's lacking the finish, but he has the quality on his side. So I don't want to pick one or the other. I can see Ian Garry getting a title shot. But then again, there's going to be a lot of arguments about Shavkat. This only upscales Shavkat from here. But Shavkat's been out for so long, you can't give him a title. Well, you can give him a title shot, but it's just not optimal. It's definitely not the ideal scenario to give him his title shot after a year of a hiatus. So, they could go with Ian Garry, and then you could do like Morales versus Prates for maybe the next number one contender shot. The crazy thing is, dude, this has been a welterweight tournament, and there's still like another one to commence, because Shavkat's going to fight someone else, right? Let's say he fights like, I don't know, Jack Della Maddalena or something. You have that fight while Morales fights Prates. So there's another tournament that doesn't have a definite next title challenger, right? We have to see how those performances go, because if Morales knocks Prates out, and let's say Shavkat finishes JDM, I think at that point they would go with Shavkat, but it would also be reasonable to go with Morales. So I don't know. I think they should definitely go with Shavkat though, regardless if he wins. That's my opinion, but I don't know if they're going to do that, because he has the win against Ian Garry, who's potentially the next title challenger. Let's say he defeats JDM. Those are two better wins than defeating Sean Brady. Dude, it hurts to say that. The Brady loss still hurts so much. No, but they are a better win than Brady and Prates. And Morales is what, like 25? Like, he's got time. Even if he doesn't fight for the title next, like, he's not even in his prime, dude. These other contenders are. So it's a great problem for the UFC to have. This many contenders hungry for a piece of Islam, but they all leave starving. I think Ian Garry presents an interesting problem due to his reach, his takedown defense, and his footwork, but I still see Islam taking him to the ground and potentially submitting him later in the fight. Belal's striking is not bad, but Garry made it competitive in many moments. He seems to adapt to the opponent's styles, so like, he could essentially make any of his opponents look good against him. I think it's the way that he prepares for them and focuses on his skills to defeat specifically his opponents. But I don't think that's going to work too well against Islam Makhachev. I think Islam will take him to the ground. I think Islam's going to be better with the striking than Belal was. Garry does a great job in adapting to the opponent's skills, but he has to be able to reach their level to do so. And Islam's is out of view, let alone out of reach. And then Volkan Oezdemir makes short work of Alonzo Menifield, no time again, knocks him out against the fence, and it seemed like Menifield forgot he was in a fight after he threw like the second punch. He just stood there taking shots. The approach to the fight is quite distinct from his Carlos Ulberg performance. He bum-rushed Ulberg and got knocked out immediately. Here he fights the opposite and does nothing. He landed like one counterpunch and that was it. So even though the approach was very different, both matches fight IQ. And yeah, pretty straightforward win for Volkan Oezdemir. That was great. That was the final knockout of the entire card. And then Myktybek Orolbai iced Jack Hermansson with a single punch. Two fighters moving weight classes, Jack Hermansson descending from middleweight and Myktybek Orolbai ascending from lightweight, or catchweight, I guess. He had 2 catchweight fights before this. And Orolbai still had the power to knock him out with a single shot. He's got that primordial power. Hermansson was already somewhat chinny before this. He got put out like this in June against Gregory Rodriguez. And 6 months later, he gets put out like this. He drained his chin even more for the weight drop. He was so much bigger than Orolbai, but it didn't really matter. He didn't have the power advantage. He wasn't necessarily stronger. He tried to weight bully and it backfired. And Hermansson was landing a lot of jabs. He was using his lateral movement throughout. And even with his successes throughout, I couldn't help but feel anticipation for Orolbai's knockout the entire time. It was like you knew it was going to happen. And when it did, Hermansson tried to defend with a high guard, but the punch still found its way around the guard and knocked him out. It makes you appreciate the Topuria brothers for how effective they make that guard. I mean, with 4-ounce gloves, it's quite difficult, right? It's very different from other striking sports due to the bigger gloves, but they are both able to defend shots so precisely. So it's a great win for Myktybek Orolbai. I don't know if he's going to stay at welterweight. He's been bouncing around. Hopefully he fights soon. And Waldo Cortes-Acosta slayed the GOAT. He knocked the blob out in the first round emphatically, but the real one who lost here was Tom Aspinall again. Waldo winning has been the worst thing for Tom's optics, dude. Tom, you got to get back in there. Get the rematch going as soon as possible. But then again, he is recovering from the eye poke. It's never going to be the best excuse with all of this Waldo success right now after he got eye poked a few weeks ago. But not all eye pokes are the same, dude. Whatever, man. It is what it is. I just hope Tom returns very quickly for the rematch and that he gets to fight Waldo in the future. Because Waldo is coming like a fastball at high speeds. Everything Waldo does is a jab at Tom. He returned after a few weeks on short notice and knocked Gaziev out while Tom is still recovering from his eye poke. Now, it's reasonable, right? But at the same time, this is horrible optics for Tom, dude. The longer he stays out, the more jabs Waldo throws at him. Hopefully one day they fight each other. I think it's inevitable. And I think Tom beats him. But it's really cool for heavyweight because they have this storyline building up between Waldo and Tom. And Shamil Gaziev was just not ready for this fight, right? He's like the king of the blobs. He's really good against those guys, but he doesn't stack up when he's elevated to fight the actual decent heavyweights. He was trying to trade punches and knock Waldo out. Waldo's way too durable and defensively aware to get knocked out in those type of exchanges. He excels in those, man. Even Sergey Pavlovich couldn't even knock him out like that. So you have to fight Waldo in a much more technical way. The approach has to be much more specific against him, as he is quite different than the rest of the heavyweights. Well, he rocked a pressuring Gaziev with the right hand and then eventually line up the right overhand to knock him out. But it's an amazing win for Waldo Cortes-Acosta, and I think he should fight Alexander Volkov. He says he wants to fight very quickly once more, and due to the reasonable rematch between Tom and Gunn, I think Volkov vs. Waldo would be a perfect number 1 contender fight. Unless Volkov wants to wait it out for his title shot, that's understandable, but as a fan, I would love to see him fight Waldo. If Volkov refuses because he wants his title shot, then I think Waldo should fight, I don't know, Curtis Blades or Jalton Almeida, one of those two. And as for Shamil Gaziev, they could rerun the Sergey Spivak fight. Even though he is higher in the rankings, there's a big cutoff between Waldo and Spivak, right? Number 6 and 7 might seem close numerically, but there's quite a gap in quality between those two. So honestly, I don't care who fights each other outside the top 6. I bundle all of those guys into one group. So the way I see the heavyweight division is the top 6, and then it's everybody else. Honestly, only that top group matters in this division. And Kyoji Horiguchi styles on Tagir Ulanbekov, defeating the size bully who was so much bigger, dude. I was quite worried for Horiguchi if he ever got taken down, but he debilitated him early with those leg kicks and made everything essentially just easier to execute. Tagir was much slower and needed to switch stances, which opened up the head kick, and Kyoji landed that a few times. I am shocked Tagir took those because he was ducking into them as sort of a wrestler's instinct, and the fight was essentially done after the first round, getting the choke, putting Tagir to sleep, resulting in both of Islam's fighters losing on the card. And most importantly, flyweight has just garnered a much-needed additional contender. And at first, I was quite concerned that Kyoji would not fight Pantoja due to them being teammates, but they do things differently in American Top Team, and he said that he is willing to fight him. He wants the belt. It's just business, and hopefully we get that fight in the future, dude. But Kyoji needs to fight someone else, right? I think a big step up in competition is necessary, and I think that should be against Amir Albazi or Brandon Royval. Either fight would be great, and I think he could win against either of those guys. And as for Tagir Ulanbekov, bantamweight, he's so big for this weight class, and his corner expressed how difficult this weight cut was for him specifically. So if he wants to continue at flyweight, I think he should fight Charles Johnson. But if not, I think he should go up to bantamweight. And then no, dude, Luke Riley knocks out P-Head Grad in the second round off a left hook exchange, dude. P-Head Grad got crushed, and he was winning. I thought my underdog pick was going to actually pull through. But you can't control the fighters to fight a certain way. The crotch sniffing was so effective. He should have lay and prayed, wall installed, bore us to death, just like the previous fight, if he really wanted to win. But after a successful first round of nearly 4 minutes of control time, Bogdan Grad decided to throw his entire game plan away and trade power punches with the striker, resulting in him getting crushed. Once both of their right hands whiffed, it commenced. The classic left hook exchange dropped Grad, made him see stars, and then finished him with ground and pound, KOing him cold. It was going beautifully for him, dude. Why would he switch it up like that? It wasn't like Riley was defending the takedowns, but, you know, maybe the crowd got to him, or he became sympathetic for boring everybody to sleep. But it's a good win for Luke Riley, dude. UFC debut, second round knockout. And then we go to Nicholas Dalby defeating Saygid Izagakhmaev by a split decision. It wasn't a forgettable fight, but the relentless wall installing was quite sleep-inducing, dude. Like, this was not a fun fight to watch at all. Dalby and Saygid were very much focused on just keeping each other on the fence, getting a few takedowns without really landing much, except from like a few clinch exchanges. Dalby landed some knees and stuff, but it was the crafty game plan, dude. He knew how to win the fight, and he executed it perfectly to win, at least. Definitely showed the distinction and experience there from the veteran in Dalby and Bogdan Grad. Yeah, there's really not much to say about the fight. Saygid reversed 2 takedowns, which was pretty cool, but other than that, there was nothing else that was interesting at all. So, good win for Dalby, I guess. He needed the win, and he was a big underdog going into it. And also Almabayev secures the win against Alex Perez by a third-round submission. His adjustments in the fight were so effective, even with the limited amount of offensive tools that he was using. I mean, mostly throwing a right uppercut, a left hook, but it shifted the fight when he applied more pressure. Now, some of it came off of the body kick. That one spinning kick to the body seemed to have hurt Perez for a moment. He countered Asu with a takedown, though. But Almabayev made the adjustment on noticing that Perez was constantly ducking his head in reaction to everything. So he began intercepting him with the right uppercut and then flinging out that long left haymaker, which I really don't like the way he throws that punch, dude, because he raises his chin up to the sky, drops his right hand, and flings that hook out from so far away. I think a fighter could easily pinpoint a right straight on the chin, countering that punch, but Perez was respecting the swing. He was ducking his head, dude. The counter uppercut was landing in the third. The left hook missed a few times, but he eventually invited also Almabayev to counter the ducking and the takedown with the guillotine. Beautiful finish by Asa Almabayev, dude. Did you guys see the shifting of the betting lines? That was pretty crazy. So Almabayev enters the fight as a minus like 190 favorite. After the first round, it shifted to Alex Perez being over a minus 300. Way too hasty. One round shifted the odds that much. Perez won the first round, but it wasn't like a foregone conclusion that he was going to win the rest of the fight. You know, it wasn't that dominant, but they portrayed him as that dominant from changing the betting lines that drastically. Somebody became rich off those betting lines for sure, because Almabayev was doing very well in the second round. He was making the proper adjustments with the intercepting uppercuts, applying more pressure, and landing the spinning kick to the body as well. So great win for him, and I think he should fight Tatsuro Taira. And then Abdulrakhman Yakhyaev gave Raffael Cerqueira a thorough beatdown and a kick out the door with one of the quickest dominations I've ever seen in a fight. He dropped him, took him down from the clinch, and submitted him all within 33 seconds, essentially beating Cerqueira in all aspects of MMA, all within 33 seconds, dude. If he hasn't had the indication that he does not belong in the UFC, that was the fight to show that. 4 losses in a row for Cerqueira. He didn't do anything in the fight. He just backstepped away from the combination. Abdul followed up with a left head kick, dropped him, landed ground and pound shots, body lock takedown, rear naked choke. Fight was over, bro. That was literally the most thorough beatdown I've ever seen. Beat him everywhere as quickly as possible. Amazing win, but it was to be expected. Abdul was like a minus 1,600 favorite. Cerqueira definitely just is not UFC caliber, and he's most likely going to get cut after that. And then Alexandre Topuria defeated Bekzat Almakhan by a decision. And this was a great fight, dude. Very technical. Almakhan had a much better first round, but then Topuria's pressure, and specifically his jab and left-hand feints, kept Almakhan guessing, and that eventually led to the knockdown. Topuria landed that across the body on the opposite side, when Almakhan was focusing on right lateral movements to avoid the right hand. But other than that, dude, Almakhan just couldn't get much going for the second and third. He was perpetually on the back foot the entire time, on the fence, and Topuria's cage cutting is some of the best I've seen in this division. Now, Almakhan's not the most elusive fighter with proficient footwork, but Topuria's was pretty adequate, dude. His high guard defense worked perfectly against Almakhan, where he didn't need to take long fleeting strides to evade him, and it allowed him to quickly recover his stance for further pressure. And also, those double leg takedowns were so incredibly fast, and he shot a lot, dude, especially in that third round. And his cardio held up the entire time. It looked like Almakhan was slowing down in the third. I mean, how can you not under that suffocating pressure that Topuria applies? But Topuria, on the other hand, didn't slow down at all. In fact, he landed like the same amount of significant strikes in every round. He had nearly an identical pace for each round. I want to see how he fights for 5 rounds, though. That would be quite interesting. I mean, I'm already pondering on a Raffael fight or a Henry Cejudo fight, Chito Vera, Kyler Phillips. Like, I think he is ready for some of those ranked matchups, but it might be too hasty. So just to be sure, they should build him up slowly. If he starts finishing these guys and just utterly dominating, then I think expediting his ascension would be reasonable. So great win for Alexandre Topuria. And then Ismail Naurdiev lightly tapped Ryan Loder's chin, and the guy died after one punch, sent him flying, dude, with a single shot. Right overhand. And the crazy thing about it is Ryan Loder went to block it. He saw the punch, he picked his hand up, but it still got around it, landed on the jaw, and knocked him dead. Usually it's the punches that you don't see. Well, Ryan Loder saw the punch, and it didn't make a difference at all, of course. Big shot from Naurdiev, a lot of power. Sometimes you can't just guard up when there's 4-ounce gloves. Easy, quick, definitive win for Ismail Naurdiev. Stellar performance. And then Nurullo Aliyev defeats Shamrock by a decision. This fight wasn't even that close. Shamrock talked a lot of trash going into this, just to block punches with his face. At least he's got a good chin, though. He got beat in the striking pretty thoroughly by Teemu Habib, and he would never be any version of Habib. He proceeded to block punches with his face, land really nothing too significant. He faked like he got eye poked, was it? Or was he complaining about a headbutt, which he also contributed to? He didn't get eye poked, he got punched in the face, if that's what his complaint was about. And then before the end of the fight, he throws his mouthpiece towards Aliyev. Ultimately, Aliyev was just darting in with punches, blitzing with combos. His similarity to Habib is so uncanny. Even the way he reaches in with his straight and blocks punches is almost identical to Habib's mechanics. He got that choke in the third round momentarily, but didn't really commit for it. Some of his takedowns got defended, which is credit to Shamrock, but it was a decent win for Aliyev. And then we finally go to Marek Buiwo versus Morgan Washington, or Denzel Freeman. Even though everybody hated this fight, I'm looking at the bigger picture. This wasn't just a fight. This could be used as a service for society. By having these two fight every single night as a foolproof way to eliminate insomnia. Yeah, cut them both. Alright, that is the UFC Fight Night card. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to give it a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.